Some supermarket shelves were emptying as a result of the taxi strike, as the logistics sector wasn't willing to risk the lives of its drivers. Some distribution centres in the mother city have been closed since the strike began. Bakeries have also not been able to deliver bread to stores. Cape Town Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis has welcomed the end of the strike. For more on what this means for food and grocery supplies, I'm joined by Sergio Luiz, Commercial Manager at Pie in the Sky Bakery in Cape Town. Sergio, thank you so much for speaking to us here on SA Tonight. Can you first of all tell us about the impact of this strike on your business and your ability to trade as normal?
Good evening to you and your listeners. Yes, it's been a very challenging week indeed. But we've managed to get through it relatively unscathed. Obviously, what it's meant for us is a dramatic reduction in production capability and capacity, mainly stemming from the lack of, the very, very poor attendance levels for our staff. Most of our staff make use of public transportation, many of them on taxis. And if that doesn't run, they can't get to work. So that's really hit us very hard this week.
Just for an idea of what you were and weren't able to do, you're saying many of your staff members couldn't get to work. Were you still able to trade at all, or did you have to close shop entirely? And what was the impact on the broader supply chain? Because if you also can't get products into your bakeries, there's no way they're going to be able to bake and get products out to consumers.
Absolutely. I think people forget that food doesn't just get onto a truck. It needs to be manufactured. It needs to go through an entire supply chain in order to reach the supermarket shelves. So people very often forget the manufacturers behind the scenes producing all the product. And so obviously, if we can't produce, we were fortunate enough to carry on producing. We managed to string together a skeleton crew of staff that managed to keep our critical clients going. So we were still able to service our clients, mainly in the retail sector, but also in food service and hospitality as well. But I think the evidence was laid bare on the retail shelves, where in most sort of categories, from fresh fruit and veg to your bakery counter, those shelves were extremely barren, and that obviously the effect of the strike firsthand, just very limited or very little supply coming through to the end user.
Now, apart from the impact on the end user, which in most instances is inconvenience, I don't think it was to the level where people didn't have food to eat and, were on the verge of starving. It was not quite that serious. But in terms of the impact on businesses, that's quite a lot more serious, because a week's worth of production lost. You're saying in your case you could maintain your production, but many businesses might not have been able to do so. How would they have felt the impact of this week?
Well, look, I think most businesses that have gotten through COVID could draw back to their experiences in that time and string together some basic products to get onto the shelves. And I think, like us, managed to somehow make a plan to get product onto the shelf. Yes, not Armageddon where there was just nothing on the shelf, but certainly impacted. And in terms of production, we were down around 50 to 60%. Obviously, the effects on our staff also not great, not being able to put food on the table for their families. Also not great. Obviously, we had to get creative and support and subsidize our staff throughout this difficult time in the form of various loans and that sort of thing, just to get them through. So the impact, obviously, yes, on a dramatic reduction in sales, but also that filters down to our staff as well. So it's a complete knock-on effect.
So 50 to 60% reduction in production. How do you recover that? Is that something you can make up? Because I'm assuming that the demand for bread doesn't suddenly spike because it's available again. Is that a loss your company is just going to have to suffer?
Unfortunately, the long and short of it, it is a loss that we're going to have to absorb. Definitely some learnings to take out of an experience like this. We obviously did experience a strike a lot shorter and a lot less dramatic than the one we've just experienced, but definitely some learnings in order to become a bit more resilient against this sort of thing. But there's only so much one can do in order to prevent the full effects of this filtering through. So long story short, this is something that businesses now need to absorb and move on.
So businesses cushioning themselves against future impact is one thing, but there's very little one can do for workers. And as you so rightly said there, they are very much dependent on transport in order to get to work. If they cannot get to work, they simply cannot earn a living. Are you thinking of any measures to try and assist your workers, or to put contingency plans in the future? Because one can only imagine that this is not going to be the last strike. South Africa is known for strikes, especially heading into election season. Those kind of things tend to intensify.
Yes. Look, there are some measures that we are trying to put in place in terms of supporting our staff in this difficult time, supporting them through no-interest loans that they can pay over a longer period of time, just to support them through to put food on their table. In terms of moving forward, if we do encounter a strike like this again, we look at getting creative, like, for example, providing accommodation very close to our production facility. So that's also being looked at in order just to keep a core element of staff that we know use public transportation, keeping them close by, so that if we do encounter something like this again, we're able to be a little bit more resilient against the effects of a strike like this.
Thank you so much for sharing this experience with us. That was Sergio Luiz, Commercial Manager of Pie in the Sky in Cape Town. Just proving once again that commuters are by far the hardest hit in these kinds of situations. Luckily, that strike is over for now.